She stood in that gleaming kitchen at 4 a.m, hands trembling as she packed 6 years of her life into a cardboard box. Maya Thompson, a black woman who had built the reputation of a 5-star resort with her soul, her grandmother's recipes, her heart poured into every dish, had just been fired. Not because her food wasn't extraordinary, but because wealthy guests didn't feel comfortable being served by her. The manager had smiled that corporate smile and said it was about image, about what luxury was supposed to look like. And apparently her face didn't fit the picture. But what happened next? What walked through that kitchen door 20 minutes after she lost everything changed the entire story. A man in an immaculate black suit. A scar running down his face like a warning. Park Jin-seok, known in certain circles as the Dragon of Busan. A Korean Mafia boss who didn't belong in kitchens, who belonged in rooms where problems disappeared. He asked her one question. "Did you make the chicken stew last night?" And when she said yes, this dangerous man, this powerful, feared figure, closed his eyes and wept. Because her cooking had given him back his dead wife for 20 minutes. Because soul cannot be faked. Because he had just tasted something money could never buy. What he offered her next would turn humiliation into the most poetic revenge imaginable. Before we begin this story, comment below where you're watching from and what time it is there. If stories about karma, love, and hidden truths move you, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. The kitchen at Sapphire Bay Resort gleamed under fluorescent lights at 4 a.m. Maya Thompson had been the first to arrive, as she had been for 6 years. Her hands moved with practiced precision, chopping vegetables for the breakfast service that would begin in 3 hours. The rhythm soothed her, the steady thunk of the knife against the cutting board, the sizzle of onions hitting hot oil, the gentle bubble of stock reducing on the back burner. She had built this kitchen's reputation, dish by dish, shift by shift. The guests never knew her name, of course. They rarely looked at her directly. But they kept coming back, and Maya knew why. Her food carried something the other chefs couldn't replicate. Soul, her grandmother used to call it. That invisible ingredient that turned sustenance into memory. At 7:30, Richard Castellano entered through the staff entrance, his expression tight. Maya felt it immediately. That shift in the air that happens when bad news walks into a room. He didn't greet her, didn't make small talk about the weather or compliment the aroma filling the kitchen. He simply said her name, flat and final, and gestured toward his office. The walk down the narrow hallway felt longer than it was. Maya's mind raced through possibilities. Had she made a mistake? Forgotten an allergy? Offended someone without knowing? She kept her station immaculate, arrived early, stayed late. What could possibly? "We need to talk about your position here," Richard began, not offering her a seat. He stood behind his desk, hands clasped, wearing that practiced expression of corporate sympathy that barely concealed impatience. "There's been feedback from some of our VIP guests." Maya's stomach tightened. Feedback? They've expressed discomfort with the current staffing arrangement in the kitchen. He paused as if the words themselves were distasteful to speak aloud. "Look, Maya, this isn't about your cooking. Everyone knows you're talented. But we have to think about the resort's image, the experience we're selling. And sometimes that means making difficult decisions to ensure our guests feel comfortable." The word hung in the air like smoke. Comfortable. Maya understood immediately. She had understood the moment he said staffing arrangement, instead of saying her name. She had understood in the polite smiles that never quite reached guests' eyes, in the way they looked past her as if she were part of the equipment, in the surprised tone when someone complimented a dish and learned she had made it. "You're firing me," she said quietly. not a question. A statement of fact. We're restructuring. Richard corrected, though they both knew what restructuring meant when it applied to only one person. We'll provide 2 weeks' severance, of course, and a reference letter. You understand this is just business. Business. Image. Comfort. Words that meant everything and nothing. Shields raised against the truth neither of them would speak aloud in that small office. Maya nodded slowly. She wouldn't beg. Wouldn't cry. Not here. Not in front of him. I'll clean out my station. I appreciate your professionalism, Richard said, relief flooding his voice. He had expected resistance, perhaps. Tears. Anger. Instead, he got silence, which somehow felt worse. The kitchen was empty when Maya returned. The other cooks wouldn't arrive for another hour. She moved through the space that had been hers, gathering her knives, her apron, the small notebook where she'd written recipe modifications and customer preferences. 6 years condensed into a cardboard box. She was wiping down her station one final time when she heard the door open behind her. Heavy footsteps. Deliberate. Slow. Maya turned. A man stood in the doorway. Tall, immaculate black suit, a vertical scar tracing the right side of his face from temple to jaw. He didn't look like he belonged in a kitchen. He looked like he belonged in a film about men who solve problems that police couldn't touch. He said nothing at first, simply stood there, studying her with eyes that seemed to calculate and measure everything they saw. Then, in accented English, heavy and precise, he asked a question that made no sense. "Did you make the chicken stew last night?" Maya blinked, still holding the dishcloth in her hands. The question seemed absurd given the circumstances. A stranger in an expensive suit, asking about stew while she packed up the remnants of her career. But something in his tone made her answer honestly. "Yes, I did." The man stepped further into the kitchen, his shoes clicking against the tile floor. He moved like someone accustomed to being watched, every gesture controlled and purposeful. When he reached the stainless steel counter, he stopped and closed his eyes. Maya watched, bewildered, as this dangerous-looking man stood perfectly still in her kitchen, seemingly lost in thought. Or memory. The silence stretched between them, broken only by the hum of refrigerators and the distant clatter of dishes being prepared in the resort's main dining area. When he opened his eyes, there was something different in them. Not the calculating coldness from before, but something raw. Vulnerable. "My wife made it that way," he said softly, almost to himself. Not with technique, not with recipes from books. She cooked with love. Real love. The kind you can taste. He paused, his hand resting on the counter as if steadying himself. "I have eaten in restaurants across 3 continents. Michelin stars. Famous chefs. Expensive ingredients I cannot pronounce. But last night, when I tasted your stew, I was back in my kitchen in Busan. 23 years ago. Before the cancer took her. Before everything became..." He gestured vaguely at his suit, his scar, the invisible weight he carried. This. Maya's grip on the dishcloth loosened. She had cooked that stew thinking it would be her last meal prepared in this kitchen. A small act of defiance, making comfort food instead of the pretentious fusion dishes Richard always pushed. She had made it the way her grandmother taught her. The way that required patience and feeling rather than measuring cups and timers. "I'm sorry about your wife," Maya said quietly. The man's eyes focused on her again, sharp and assessing. "Why are you packing?" The directness of the question caught her off guard. She could lie, preserve her dignity, pretend she was leaving by choice. But something about this stranger's honesty demanded the same in return. "I was fired this morning. About 20 minutes ago, actually." His expression didn't change, but something shifted in the air around him. A stillness that felt predatory. Why? Maya hesitated. How did you explain racism to someone you just met? How did you translate discomfort and image and staffing arrangement into the ugly truth beneath the corporate language? They said guests complained, that they weren't comfortable being served by me. She met his eyes steadily. My cooking was never the problem. My face was. The man was quiet for a long moment. Then he did something unexpected. He pulled out his phone and made a call. He spoke in Korean, rapid and authoritative, his tone leaving no room for argument. Maya caught only fragments, not understanding the language but recognizing the sound of orders being given. When he ended the call, he looked at her again. What is your name? Maya. Maya Thompson. Maya Thompson, he repeated as if committing it to memory. My name is Park Jin-seok. You may have heard people call me the Dragon of Busan, though I do not particularly like this name. I am... He paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. I am a businessman. I invest in properties, hotels, restaurants, resorts. He let that sink in before continuing. Including this one, Sapphire Bay Resort. I own 40% of it. The manager who fired you, Richard Castellano. He does not know this. The public investors do not know this. It is how I prefer to operate. Quietly. Maya's heart began to pound. She understood what he was telling her, though she couldn't quite believe it. Park Jin-seok reached into his jacket and pulled out a business card. He placed it on the counter between them. I have a private restaurant. Very small, very exclusive. No menu. I hire one chef at a time, and they cook whatever speaks to their soul. The current chef is retiring next month. He pushed the card toward her. I would like you to come work for me. The salary is 10 times what you made here. You will have complete creative freedom. No one will question your face. Only your food will matter. Maya stared at the card. Elegant, minimalist. Just a name, a phone number, and an address in the city's financial district. No company name. No title. The kind of card that said more by what it omitted than what it revealed. I don't understand, she said slowly. You don't know me. You've tasted one dish. Why would you... Because I've spent 10 years searching for what I tasted last night. Park interrupted, his voice firm but not unkind. Do you know what it is like to lose the only person who made you feel human? To spend every day afterward moving through the world like a machine? My wife taught me that food is the only honest language. You cannot lie with food made from the heart. You cannot fake soul. He gestured to the empty kitchen around them. These people here, they fired you because they are afraid. Afraid of anything that does not fit their narrow idea of what luxury should look like. They confuse appearance with quality, polish with substance. They are fools. Maya felt something stirring in her chest. Not quite hope, not quite anger. Something in between. What exactly do you want from me? Park's expression remained neutral, but there was a glint in his eye. I want you to cook. That is all. Cook the way you did last night. Cook the way your grandmother taught you. Cook with truth. He paused. But I also want to offer you something else. A choice. What choice? I can simply hire you. You come work for me, leave this place behind. Start fresh. No one here ever knows what happened. You build a new life. That is option 1. He leaned slightly against the counter. Or, you let me do what I do best, which is remind people that there are consequences for cruelty disguised as policy. Maya's pulse quickened. What does that mean? It means I'm hosting a private dinner here at Sapphire Bay Resort in 1 week. Very important investors. People whose money keeps places like this alive. Richard Castellano has been preparing for months. This dinner will determine whether he secures the funding he desperately needs. He is, how do you say, drowning in gambling debts. He needs this night to be perfect. Park's smile was thin and cold. I would like you to be the guest chef for this dinner. I will tell Richard that it is non-negotiable. That my investors specifically requested a chef who cooks with soul, not sophistication. He will have no choice but to agree. Because without my presence, there is no dinner. Without the dinner, there is no funding. Without funding, this resort closes within 6 months. Maya felt her breath catch. The audacity of it. The calculated cruelty. You want him to watch me cook, after he fired me. I want him to understand that image means nothing when the foundation beneath it crumbles. I want him to serve wine and smile at people who hold his future in their hands while knowing that the woman he discarded is the only reason they are impressed. And then, at the end of the night, when everyone is satisfied and happy, I want him to hear the truth. What truth? Park's eyes were steady, unflinching. That I am pulling my investment. That the resort will be restructured under new management. That he is fired. Not for being bad at his job, but for being bad at being human. The kitchen suddenly felt smaller, the air heavier. Maya thought about her daughter, about the tuition bills stacking up, about the years of swallowing indignities and pretending everything was fine. She thought about her grandmother saying that good people don't always win, but they should always stand up. And after the dinner? She asked quietly. After you humiliate him in front of everyone? After the dinner, you become the executive culinary director of Sapphire Bay Resort. You rebuild the kitchen the way you always wanted. You hire who you want. You create menus that matter. You prove that excellence has nothing to do with what people expect it to look like. Park straightened, buttoning his suit jacket. But I need to know now, Maya Thompson. Are you someone who walks away quietly? Or are you someone who makes them remember why they should have never let you go? Maya looked down at the cardboard box containing 6 years of her life. Then she looked back at Park Jin-seok. This dangerous man with sad eyes who had tasted grief in her cooking and decided to weaponize kindness. She picked up his business card. When do we start? The week that followed moved like a dream wrapped in precision. Park's people arrived at Maya's apartment with contracts, logistics, kitchen specifications. Everything she needed would be provided. Every ingredient she requested would appear. There were no limitations except one. The food had to be hers. Authentic. Uncompromising. Richard Castellano had called her 3 days before the dinner, his voice tight with forced professionalism. Maya, I understand there's been a development. Mr. Park has requested you specifically for Saturday's event. I trust there are no hard feelings about our previous conversation. This is a tremendous opportunity for everyone involved. Maya had said nothing, just listened to him rewrite history in real time, turning her firing into a previous conversation, and his desperation into her opportunity. She simply confirmed she would be there and hung up. Now, standing in the same kitchen where she had been dismissed, Maya felt the weight of what was about to happen. The dining room beyond the doors was filled with men and women in expensive suits, speaking in hushed tones about market shares and quarterly projections. Richard moved among them like a nervous conductor, ensuring every glass stayed full, every smile stayed bright. Park Jin-seok sat at the head table, silent and observing. He had not acknowledged Maya when he arrived, maintaining the fiction that she was merely a hired chef, nothing more. But she had caught his brief nod when their eyes met, a silent reminder of the plan. The dinner began. Course after course emerged from Maya's hands. She had chosen dishes that told stories. Her grandmother's braised short ribs with gochujang glaze, a fusion that honored both her heritage and Park's. Cornbread soufflé with honey butter that melted on the tongue. Collard greens cooked low and slow with smoked ham hock. shrimp and grits elevated with preserved lemon and fresh herbs. Each plate was a declaration. This is who I am, and I'm extraordinary. The investors responded with the kind of enthusiasm that cannot be faked. Conversations paused mid-sentence as people tasted. Eyes closed in appreciation. Compliments flowed. Richard's tension began to ease. Perhaps he thought he would survive this night after all. Dessert was Maya's masterpiece. A deconstructed peach cobbler with buttermilk ice cream and brown butter crumble, served warm with a drizzle of bourbon caramel. When the last plate was cleared and the final compliment given, Park Jin-seok stood. The room fell silent. "I would like to thank everyone for joining me tonight," he began, his accented English carrying easily across the space. "Food like this reminds us why we invest in hospitality. It is not about thread count or marble fixtures. It is about moments that make us feel human again." Richard smiled, relieved. This was going well. Better than well. Park continued. "This chef, Maya Thompson, was fired from this resort 1 week ago. The reason given was that guests were uncomfortable being served by her. Not because of her skill, as you have all experienced tonight, but because of how she looked." The silence shifted, became uncomfortable. Richard's face drained of color. "The manager who made this decision, Richard Castellano, believed that image was more important than excellence, that comfort was more valuable than truth. He was wrong." Park's voice remained calm, factual, devastating. "I am withdrawing all of my investment from Sapphire Bay Resort, effective immediately. The restructuring will begin Monday morning. Mr. Castellano, you are relieved of your duties, not because you are bad at hospitality, but because you do not understand what it means." Richard tried to speak, his mouth opening and closing soundlessly. The investors sat frozen, unsure whether to intervene or simply watch. Park turned to Maya, his expression softening almost imperceptibly. "Miss, Thompson will assume the role of executive culinary director during the transition. She will rebuild this kitchen as a place where talent is recognized regardless of what it looks like, where food made with soul is valued above food made for appearance." He raised his glass. "To honesty, in food and in all things." The investors, after a moment's hesitation, raised their glasses as well, not because they were particularly moved by justice, but because Park Jin-seok had just demonstrated what happened when you mistook him for someone without power. 3 months later, Maya stood in her newly renovated kitchen, watching her diverse team prepare for the evening service. The menu had changed. The culture had changed. People came now not because Sapphire Bay looked exclusive, but because the food was unforgettable. Park visited rarely, but when he did, he always ordered the same thing. Chicken stew, prepared exactly as Maya had made it that final night before everything changed. On his most recent visit, as he sat alone at a corner table savoring each spoonful, Maya joined him. "Do you really taste your wife when you eat my food?" she asked gently. Park was quiet for a long moment. Then he smiled, a real smile, sad and grateful at once. "For 20 minutes I get her back, every single time. Some men buy art or cars or islands to fill the emptiness. I buy moments with ghosts." He looked at Maya. "You give me something money alone could never purchase. You give me memory made tangible." Maya understood then what she had known instinctively but never articulated. Justice had not been the point. Revenge had not been the point. Two broken people had found in each other's pain a reason to create something beautiful from something cruel. Park finished his stew and stood to leave. At the door, he turned back. "Thank you, Maya Thompson, for cooking with your soul. The world needs more people who refuse to hide what makes them extraordinary." And then he was gone, leaving behind an empty bowl and the faint scent of memories that tasted like home. If this story moved you, pause for a moment and reflect. Have you ever been judged not by what you could do, but by how you looked? Have you ever watched someone mistake polish for substance, appearance for excellence? Have you ever wondered what would happen if the people who discarded you realized too late what they had lost? Share your experiences and feelings in the comments. We read every single one. And if you believe in stories about dignity, justice, and the power of authentic humanity, don't forget to subscribe to the channel.